Grant. Let's just hypothetically, because I like that word, say that Jett and Deegan are 100% and they're riding 100% and maybe even potentially over their head. Who goes down first? Who can ride the ragged edge better on a 450 when they're face to face?
That is the $1 million question, isn't it? Literally, because whoever doesn't go down wins the championship and gets the $1 million. If you go look at the very early days of Jett, let's just say when it was Geico Honda, he did have some crashes. He did ride a little bit on the edge. I remember at Anaheim when Ferrandis caught him up and he crashed in the whoops. But I also don't believe you hold that over someone's head. Everyone's made some rookie mistakes. When you watch him now, he looks like probably the most in control rider. Like with his style and his finesse, the only other person it kind of reminded me of was Stefan Everts. And because when I went to Europe, I actually the team I rode for, Harry Everts, was the team manager. So I actually got to ride with Stefan. And it was a big eye-opener because I remember a couple of times watching him and I'm like, he doesn't look that fast. And you grab a stopwatch and you're like, how the hell is he doing that lap time? Like it didn't make sense. I couldn't wrap my brain around watching him and then seeing the results. And I feel a little bit the same with Jett. But then you look at Deegan's style, it is loose. It is a little more sideways, a little bit off the bike, which is not saying it's a bad thing because that's also been a little bit Tomac style too. So there are different ways to get it done. I've often used this analogy. I watched Stefan Everts ride, and he would stand through entire corners in the ruts and was fast as could be. Then obviously when I came to the US, Ricky was the guy to beat in motocross, and I watch him and I'm going, that's not how you're supposed to do it. He just sat down, just grabbed a handful of throttle and a handful of clutch through the roughest line. And, I'm like, no, he's not even trying to avoid the bumps. He's just smashing them, and two completely different techniques and on opposite side of the spectrum, but they both worked. Both those guys were phenomenal athletes. So I don't believe there's one way to ride a motorcycle these days. Yes, you try to do certain fundamental things that make you a better rider, but it's like in anything. Everyone, Formula One, you hear about drivers saying, I can't get this car to work for me, but my teammate is not having an issue like I am. And everyone's like, well, you're in the same car. Yeah, well, that car was built a certain way and it might suit your style, but not your style. And, again, it gets a little complex sometimes, but I am curious to see when they get pushed to their limit or beyond, who cracks. Sometimes the most smoothest riders in the world have the biggest of crashes. And the other guys that look like they're going to crash all the time don't really crash. So
that's an interesting point. Yeah, because Deegan definitely rides more on edge, I would say, than Jett does. So, like, just from that standpoint, I would lean towards Deegan not crashing and Jett crashing if he's pushed to the edge. But I don't know.
It'll be fun. I will say it's going to be fun because, back to your point a little bit earlier, Johnny, I think the mind game's already starting. And I think if, for motocross fans, this is good. That's what we've always wanted. And everyone talks about the 90s and the 80s, the 90s, the good old days, but there were rivalries. There were guys that weren't afraid to talk a little smack about their competitor on the podium, like right in front of their face. There was no social media to take
it out of context.
Yes. So you could, on the podium, it's like, hey, how do you feel to win? Yeah, it was great. I'm just glad I kicked his ass again. And and then I think, at the end of the day, it's what people want. We want rivalries. I think it's cool. You've got, when you look at the series, it's very international as well. You've got obviously the Australians, you've got the Europeans, the Americans, even several South Americans, South Africans. So you've got eyes on the sport all around the world. They were before, but I think it's got to another level. You know, in Europe, you know, when I moved over, I felt like they did track what was happening over here. But now, you know, with digital media and you can watch anything, everything, a podcast, highlights on YouTube, whatever, everyone knows what everyone's doing. And so there's a lot of eyes on the sport, especially from an international standpoint. And, you know, again, the rivalries just help keep people engaged. So, you know, to me, it's just, it's good if you're a fan.
Yeah.
Hey, Johnny, something to keep in mind. Deegan was racing at Loretta's 4 years ago.
Yeah.
That's the part that's still dumbfounding, because I agree with Grant 100%. I think we're going to see what we saw with Chase and with Tomac outdoors, where those two were 45 seconds ahead of everybody because they were just battling and beating the shit out of each other. But it was whoever could force, it's kind of the Ricky James era, whoever could force the other one into a mistake was pretty much going to win. Like Grant said, it's not the fastest guy who wins on race day, but the one who makes the least amount of mistakes. When you go back to the athletic maturity of both Jett and Deegan, neither one of them. Remember last summer, Deegan did the helicopter. Remember when Jett decided to try to jump a jump that didn't exist downhill? We don't see that this year from either one of them. Athletic maturity a year later.
Well, I think they're only like a year apart too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Deegan's
very
19 and I think
Jett might be 21.
20 or 21. But
Somebody
to
in
your
the chat.
point, well, and like all the statistics keep saying, you know, Deegan right now is trending in front of Jett's accomplishments, which is pretty damn dumbfounding when you think about
I didn't
what
think it was
Jett
gonna
has
happen,
done.
to be honest. I didn't think. I thought there was more of the Mike Alessi hype going with Deegan, and then he quickly proved myself and so many people wrong.
But are you wrong? And I say this very politely. Are you really wrong when his first futures race he got like third and looked like he couldn't ride a bike? Fourth and looked like he couldn't ride a bike, and then the next week he's on a full factory and freaking just kills it. I mean, he has proven, whether you give it to Hayden himself and or with Brian, and you put that dynamic duo together, they have made everybody eat crow. So you can't say that you were wrong. They just have, I mean, flat out stepped up, and I have to give Deegan props. The kid does not crack under pressure. You could argue he grew up with a camera in his face and all that, but just because you grew up in it doesn't mean you can excel in it. Say it again, Johnny. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just saying, like, he has flexed that muscle so much to where he's just on another level compared to everyone else. So if he can't beat Jett straight up, he can beat him
in 4 years. Look at that.
But his mind games are just so exponentially better than the rest of the people. Because if we think about the average motocross athlete nowadays, you're homeschooled, you're only around a few people during the week with your trainer and blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, you go to the races. There's not a whole lot of bullying antics or anything that they have to deal with. And so then when you're exposed